Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune, and this is the final part of the World Arena Season 5 tier list videos where we go over the Dark Element units. If you missed any part of the series, they'll be down in the description below. However, before that, let's just like, comment, and subscribe, and you can catch me at Twitch at twitch.tv/WildNeptune. Now, on to the tiers. Dominant. Units that the meta is revolving around drafts, bans, pre-bans. They're almost always dictated by units in this tier right here. Meta. The units that are going to be the bulk of most drafts. Alternative picks. Substitutes for things in the meta tier, or maybe need some sort of redundancy. Specialized. Counter picks. Things that require very specific compositions will fall into here. Out of the meta/meme, units that might have been very strong in the past and just aren't right now, or things that just kind of, funny. And then not usually viable. Units that are not consistent or bring enough value to be drafted in almost any circumstance at all. Also, I know that I have not talked about any of the new 3-star units, which are Christy, Melanie, Helen, Camellia, and Penelope, and this is because their icons are not on this list. Honestly, most of them would go into not usually viable, with maybe things like Christy being a meme or specialized, right? Honestly, I don't really know enough about Camellia or Penelope to give an opinion on them. So, anyway, with all that being said, let's go. We will start off with Apoc Ravi. And right now, I would say she's the meta level hero. She is one of the more common picks in the bulk composition. And just the overall sustain and damage she can do in those stall out teams with like a Ruel, another Knight, is very scary. She makes it so that you win that matchup a lot because of her injury. And her injury is consistent enough, and it ramps up fast enough where it's a problem, right? Now, she's not great into everything. Obviously, things like Spectre and Landy are going to be pretty good into her, right? But she is one of the few, again, pure single target damage dealers that has enough upside to see usage. Arbiter Vildred right now is a specialized pick. I honestly don't think he's that good right now. Even as an anti-cleave unit, he is kind of janky. And in cleave, he's not picked as often anymore either. So, just so many things counter Arbiter Vildred, like super hard. It's not like, oh, this unit has a counter pick, right? And I can play around this or deal with this type. So many things just deal with Arbiter Vildred in a way where picking him into one of those things or pick him too early is just an instant loss in a lot of cases. He is a lot like SSB in that case, but maybe even more worse, right? So, ADS is another specialized pick that can be occasionally used as a counter against certain things. I have tried using it against Rems, AOL Angelicas, right? Again, with Arbiter Vildred not in the meta anymore, ADS has lost one of her primary targets. Too. I've tried using it because I made Chloe's to strip off buffs there also. Against Charlotte's, right? Seal is a very powerful debuff. ADS's main issue is that she is way too inconsistent. There were just way too many fights where I do an S1 and I don't get the seal, or I soul burn it and it gets resisted, right? Her S2, or like I get the seal, but I don't get an S2 proc ever, so I don't like get the pushes and blind the enemies too, right? There's just so much RNG in her kit to do what like the base thing she needs to do, and until her consistency is fixed somehow, or her upside becomes so good that you're okay with the loss of consistency, she's never going to be a high tier pick. As Kartuja, I would say he's a meme, right? I do have a build, and I'm pretty sure I'm the person who made the build. The high HP with decent attack as Kartuja to bait Ostrazes. Now, does this work? Sometimes it does, right? It's actually kind of funny, which is why it's a meme. It is kind of MLM. Would I build this if I were you watching this video? Probably not. Why did I do it? I don't know, but it works sometimes. Okay, which is better than what I would have expected. Okay. Assassin Sid and Assassin Coley. I'm gonna put both a Sid and a Coley into meta. A Sid is probably the best speed contest for anti-cleave in the game right now, as a Sid will bring a soul killer and a silence also with high damage, which also means that he can be decent against things like AOL Angelica, if you know that they're not running immunity. A Coley is also a pretty decent speed contest overall. However, a Coley has more usage than anti-cleave. You can slow it down a little bit to do a soul burn and knock out a high value target. The most common targets she's used to kill now are going to be AOL Angelica, Rems, because her soul burn multiplier is huge. She can do, if you have good damage, something like 15, 16, 17k on high defense targets. If they don't have a knight protecting them, think 20 plus k, with kind of average damage, I would say, overall. So A Coley still now these heroes are very high gear requirement, but what they do is almost second to none. A-Lot right now is going to be out of the meta. It's just really hard to use him in a world where Politis exists. BBK is almost not even a meme anymore, because everybody knows that BBK, if you see her, will almost always be on counter, unless it's a Cleave team. And again, Cleave has better finishers than BBK anyway. Bryceria is going to be more of a specialized counter type unit. Kind of difficult to draft, and honestly does kind of get screwed over by those random resists and stuff like that too. The damage build, I believe, is the one you want to go for, and I do think you want a little bit of effectiveness on her too. Cdom is going to be a meta unit, almost dominant, because she is drafted in almost every single Cleave team in existence right now. But the draft doesn't really revolve around Cdom, or your ban really doesn't. I would say, but still, the core damage dealer to the burst Cleave team. Emil Haste is going to be another meta unit in the dark slot, and this is because May Chloe is really good. Emil Haste can be really good against May Chloe teams. Not always. Remember, you still need to be able to kill the May Chloe team with an Haste S3, or follow it up with enough damage after the S3 to get the full value from it. But ML Haste is very problematic still for May Chloe, so very, very strong still. Cesarado will be a specialized pick. There are actually a lot less things he's good against right now, with things like Cerise largely out of the meta. Caesar, like, he's really good against Caesarea, right? So if you see somebody draft Caesarea, like, early, pick Cesarado. Cesarado destroys that composition. They have to ban him, basically. Another counter pick, though, is going to be ML Kawazu, and I'll be honest, whenever I see him drafted, I don't think I've ever let him through, right? I'm pretty sure I've always post-banned him when I see him. So he's a very strong counter pick. It's just that I know there are ways to play around him. I personally think it's just like doing a lot of single target abilities. So if you have things on your team that must AoE, you probably want to get rid of him, right? But even so, I know if I'm talking to other players who have used him before, that he is kind of, not the hardest unit to play around to. Axe God. Axe God is not viable. Unlike LQC, he doesn't have the damage for anti-light targets, and he also doesn't have the built-in protection that LQC does. ML Rin is going to be, right now, she's out of the meta. She's kind of specialized as an anti, like, speed cleave, speed contest unit, but with Cerise no longer being picked as the premier opener for cleave most of the time, and the fact that ML Rin has to go through multiple 15% layers to really do what she wants to do, makes it so that there's just too much RNG in her kit. Dark Corvus, he's a meme. Let's be fair here. Like, even in those really, like, heavy tank comps, you're not gonna draft the Dark Corvus most of the time. Dilibet is a specialized counter hero for debuffs, maybe against like AOL Angelica. Like other units, though, her consistency is a problem overall, and making it so that she works like more often would make it so that she's a lot better. FCC is going to be the first hero here I would put into Dominant, and she will be the only knight in the game that will go into this tier. I do think she's maybe like a half step better than the Crow and Carmen right now. Now, this doesn't mean that she's better in all cases than those other two knights. It's just that the value that she brings against more things in the meta makes it so that I feel that she's just that much better overall. So good against Fairy Tail, better against Cleave, right? She does have things that counter her pretty hard, like OpSig, stuff like that. LQC, right? But overall, just a very solid pick. ML Calrick right now is going to be specialized. Having immunity and attack buff on the same ability is very strong. It's just that right after he does that, he doesn't quite do anything else, and he doesn't really offer your team any more sustain beyond that. Like, the problem is that when you compare him to, say, like Amelia, where Amelia has attack buff, on one target, and also like a cleanse and a barrier on another ability too. The Amelia will help you sustain through like damage. ML Calrick will not. May Chloe will help you sustain through some damage. ML Calrick will not. And ML Calrick, you can't really build him with damage and have him survive and have him fast enough and with enough ER to do what you want him to do to be valuable, right? He just needs way too much, and the rest of his kit doesn't really make it so that you can push for victories with the benefits that he gives. MLK is a meme. There are rare cases where he will be good and might even winning the matches, but those are really, really rare. Kitty, like ML Calrick, very similar, where Kitty actually, I think, might even be better than ML Calrick right now, is Kitty at least will help you push offense a little bit faster, right? Because of a dual attack, right? Kitty's bigger thing, though, is that she doesn't give immunity. So there are a lot of cases where you are kind of screwed over if your speed tuning against the enemy team is a little bit janky. So Op Secret is going to be a... she's kind of hard to pick. I'll put in a Specialized, though, and this is because mostly she'll be in a cleave team. Sometimes you'll just see her normally as a DPS unit if an FCC is picked, but most of the time it will be in cleave, and she is very strong in cleave. Remember, Specialized does not mean the unit is particularly weak or strong. It just means that they are going to be typically seen as a counter pick or in a more like niche type composition. Remnant Violet, I believe, is going to be an alternative DPS pick. Is seeing more of an uptick recently as a premier single target damage burster. I do think A. Coli is seen to be a little bit better these days, as A. Coli has a higher first turn burst with a soul burn, but Remnant Violet has become kind of problematic overall, especially if he actually dodges. Of course, as we all know, he never dodges, so, you know. Shooting Star at Katie's is a meme. She's been a meme before, and she's still one. The Sinful Angelica is going to be a Specialized pick. Honestly, with RB gone, she's seen a little bit less usage overall. Politis also kind of hurts her a lot too. Things like, even against Maid Chloe, she's not that great, as oftentimes you can't actually do enough damage to a Maid Chloe team to capitalize on her ability anyway. So, Spectre Tenebria is going to be another hero we put into the dominant category. It's really up in the air whether or not her or Landy is the best DPS in the game. Spectre having permanent stealth is so strong, right? Her combo where she gets stronger as more dicks have died is also really, really strong. Her not being able to be countered on the S1 is also very strong against a number of units right now. So, Spectre, definitely the best ML DPS in the game. Troublemaker Crozet will be an alternative pick. Can be decent for like a bulky defensive option if you really want to protect one particular DPS in those protect the king or queen, whatever comp that he might be using. So something like a Crozet, Ruel, DPS plus like 1 type deals. So Straze is still be another meta DPS. His use rate has fallen off a little bit from what I've seen. However, as just a pure tank killer, he is still really strong. Sven, right now is going to be out of the meta or meme. For a little bit, he was being used as kind of a jank Charon is anti-cleave, but with Charon also not being used anymore, of course Sven is not being used anymore either. Mo Leo is also going to be a meme. Even post buff, and even in bomb comps, you still don't use him, right? Most Caesarea comps just don't care about Mo Leo's bombs and just care about her own bombs. TML, top model Luluka, is going to be, I would say, a alternative hero, but just kind of barely. She falls into a similar usage as Mo Violet does overall. Also, sometimes might be used as a secondary for some cleave teams too, as a burst damage dealer. I've personally been very underwhelmed with a lot of Tomokas I've seen when they're drafted, but I do see her occasionally. And finally, we have Closer Charles to close out this list. And he's going to be a specialized unit where you will only see him in cleave teams. So, even more so than Op Secret, where Op Secret, sometimes you'll see her outside of cleave. Closer Charles, I believe, I've never seen him outside of cleave. He's okay in cleave. Like, sometimes I feel like he's really good, and sometimes I feel like he didn't really do anything at all. Honestly, his evasion buff that he gets is, if he didn't get that, I actually think he'd be a bad unit. But he has proven to be decent, at least. And it's over. All 5 parts. Do you agree with this list? If so, tell me why or why not down below. Anyway, thanks for watching this series of videos. I'm Al Neptune. It's been a good one. Nep out.